think you can discover the innovations that deserve to have heavied up, this is no longer a pilot, this is one of our top 2 priorities.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Net Promoter can uncover.
Yeah. And if it connects to, and it would, behavior
Right.
for arts and culture, then that becomes part of the sustainability story.
Don't trust it just on score. Score is just the early indicator that is promising.
Yes. So the magic for me would be to get a group of clients, the field, to take this seriously, not just in implementing it and asking the question, but acting on it so that we could grow, in our parlance, the proportion of advocates and buyers.
Sure, because
That's
it's a
sustainable
prioritization
income.
system for innovations.
Right.
You get lots of ideas, let's test and learn with quick feedback with Net Promoter and move down that path.
Centered around the values that an organization has that ideally are about positively impacting lives. And in arts and culture, we've got that in spades. So the flip side, the other side of this conversation is about the culture. It's about the people who do the work. At TRG, I've begun saying, data doesn't do anything, people do everything. Because today in arts and culture, CRM systems are now deeply ingrained. There are 167 reports that administrators get every day. We are obsessed with data and metrics. And there's a belief that data-driven strategy will save us and help us be solvent. And there's some truth to that. You and I both know that.
Yeah, big data creates new tools, but the 5 senses bring in more bits of information than your brain can possibly handle. So we've been living in a big data world without calling it that since caveman days. I think the trick, the insight I had was you got to have emotion before you get motion. And you got to make a person want to take action and do something and pay attention to the most relevant data for sure. But until you generate emotion, and finances, they don't really get the right emotion. On the other hand, I enriched a life, I earned a standing ovation. You get your groups to be thinking, when I get a 10, it's the equivalent of a standing ovation.
Yes.
It just makes you feel like your life is worthwhile. You've accomplished something meaningful. You get a 0 or a 2, I failed, I better dig in and find, and there is the emotional energy to create the motion.
It's so interesting to hear a data guy talk about emotion. I mean, I really want our listeners to make that, to really get that. I mean, you're someone who's a Harvard-educated, Bain, worldwide top best.
I went there.
World best consultants, data-driven geek. I know that. I know that's true.
It's true. I took when I was a kid, I thought I would get a PhD in econometrics. So I took a number of those quantitative graduate courses as an undergrad. Turned out it was the wrong path, but I did learn a lot. And it's very powerful. The tools you have is amazing. But it gets down to people have to want to innovate and take the risk and be willing to evaluate those risks and spot the failures and the successes. And those are way more human emotional issues than data-driven issues.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the translation of this to the people side. It's funny because I teach at SMU. Your first book was on my curriculum, and it's an arts marketing class that I teach there in their MBA, MA program. And they come in, I know, expecting to hear about social media, and we end up talking about RFM models and loyal behavior, and then how you create a culture where people can work to, get that loyal behavior. It's bigger than that, I know.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about people and their role in this? We say data doesn't do, people do. What would you say about?
Well, I'd go back. The Bain experience I had first around loyalty and how you get feedback was in the employee space, and we tried to build Bain around a set of values about how people treat each other in service to getting client results. But all of our metrics were the standard ones about finances. So we changed that. And one thing we started measuring was we'd ask everyone on a team how likely they'd recommend their team leader as a person to work for. And would they, how likely is it they'd want to work with them again? Under any circumstance, sometimes, never. And we use that data.
So simple.
Simple, and people had to be confident that this was a secret ballot. But then we used that initially we'd rank order everyone in every position by their team feedback score, and the people in the bottom half weren't eligible for promotion. So the only way to get promoted through the various levels at Bain is to have your teams feel like you're the kind of person who lives the values and creates the kind of environment that make you be proud to be a part of. And I think most organizations should have that same thing. We then figured out, well, we can't just do this every 6 months. That gives a grade. But we want people to learn and get better. We don't want leaders just to have it's like nuclear at the,
Right.
Am I going to get promoted to manager or do I have to leave?
Right.
Well, we now have a process where every team, every week or two, sits down with a survey that gets pinged out on their smartphone that they do in advance of their huddle. And everyone shares the data at the huddle. It's based on how likely to recommend this team experience to a qualified colleague. How happy are you with your work-life balance? How happy are you with the results we're getting for a client? Anyone deserve a shout out at living the values? And then this process, it's your permanent record. So just getting a shout out isn't soft. For partners, that you get one of the most important pieces of feedback is how many people in the firm said you inspired them during the year. And there are some partners who have hundreds of people say that and some who have close to zero. But that's really part of what helps you succeed or not at Bain. And you want to earn that. So you don't really need a compensation system to want to get better at inspiring the people below you. So there are a lot of techniques, I think, that are very applicable to arts organizations that have to do with what's the feedback I want for my team that drives their behavior and helps them solve their issues on their own, as opposed to the boss 3 levels up having to get involved.
Yeah.
Problem employees can get spotted right in the team, and they should be.
Yeah, the traditional management practices. I mean, this shakes up the traditional way of thinking about management, right? Which is hierarchical, and is in best practice organizations. Reviews happen twice a year or once a quarter, and this makes it much more at the
It's
work
the same thing with customer
level.
feedback.
Right.
It's got to be a daily flow, or it doesn't get your attention. If
Yeah.
you're measuring something twice a year,
Yeah.
it's only interesting twice a year. Stuff that's important, it has to be on your mind every day.
Yeah. There's a crisis I have come to conclude in arts and culture as it relates to people. A lot of fear that if you're not performing well, it will be hard to replace you. Fear that I will hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
A lot of emotion in arts and culture. A lot of people who care deeply about, actually, and so I'm just musing a little bit in the moment. One of the things that we've started to do is say to the leader, who's a person. That's what I want you to think about next here. The leader is an important person, and we've said, look, people are so important because people are the ones that get the results. You want the results, it's your people who are going to do it. So you as a leader have to invest in systems that can, but there's my word, but this is what, yours is a system. It's a quick, dynamic system. But the people issue is one of the hardest issues to get leaders to attend to. It's hard to have hard conversations. It's hard to move people on. It's hard to take the time to recruit people according to the values that you have in your company.
Yeah, we put a lot of energy at Bain into hiring the right people, not just talents, but human beings and values. And then I think one of the things we improved was we added a value about we'd never let another Bainey fail. This notion that not everyone is going to get promoted to partner, but we will not let each other fail.
Yeah.
And those people who are going to leave, first of all, they get a lot of tools to get better at the things they're struggling with. but we also put a lot of effort into making sure our people get placed into great jobs. We don't just say, oh, you're not going to get promoted, you're on your own. And that value of caring about, they are part of your permanent record, whether they're working for you or not.
Boy,
what
oh
they
boy,
say
is that
about
right.
you has more credibility than what your customers say about you.
Yeah.
So treat that, not everybody can stay and is going to be able to earn a valued role on a productive team. But when that can't be the case, you better really bend over backwards to make sure they got a soft landing.
Yeah. Your second book, I really enjoyed a lot. It felt a little bit like a workbook to me. Like, here are the things that you can be doing.
Yeah.
It was incredibly useful. And so I point that out to people who are listening, actually. But what it reminded me is something that is so important for small organizations, which most are, even the biggest arts and cultural organizations are small, right?
Yeah.
They'll have 200 or 300 employees, the biggest ones. Is how important the issue of recruitment is, the first 40 days, setting people up for success and saying, whose fault is it if they fail? It's not their fault, it's your fault. And then being able to think about promotion differently. So I don't know that there's a long way to go here with your experiences specifically, but I find it challenging. I was just with a client last week who's tremendous. I mean, so entrepreneurial, so open, great leadership, but who says, it's hard for me to hang on to talented people because my ability to move them within a 50-person staff team, if they want to grow and change, is limited. And so, I don't know, I feel like there's a real here in arts and culture about how we think about how people help us achieve our objective and what promotion even looks like, satisfaction.
People don't stay in the same job. It's not just the arts. People just don't stay in the same place for 10, 20 years anymore. I've been at Bain over 40 years. That's just weird in this day and age. But loyalty doesn't mean staying there. Dead wood stays there. Loyalty means that while you're there, you are committed to helping that team live its values and enrich the lives it touches. And if you deliver on that, you've got a promoter forever, because their kids will work for you. They're relatives. So the notion is, I'm not going to keep them forever, but I am going to focus on a deliverable that makes them proud and feels like their life is better. And when you do that, and you provide the right test and learn feedback, it's feedback from customers, it's feedback from fellow employees that helps you do that. Otherwise, the only feedback is the financial stuff, and that takes you down the wrong path. It makes you try to lock somebody into a 2-year subscription instead of a 1-year.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Dead wood stay, right? It's an incredibly important way to think about it. Aligning everyone's work around the values as well as you can while they're there.
And provide feedback so everyone knows who is contributing to that.